worn from silence deep, new ones are born. A thousand doomsday shift, they sway the wind. Whispers, don't you stay. A count shadows stretched so long. Footsteps fade, where do I belong? Oh, heart of my mind, why do you roam? Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. The cuckoo's chime, a distant call. Her anklets sing, rise, don't you stay. The stars, they glimmer, speak of pain. Each grain of sand, it knows my name. Can you hear it, the voice within? A song of loss, where love begins. Heart of my mind, why do you roam? Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. Heart of mine, why do you roam? Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. The cuckoo's chime, a distant call. Her anklets sing, rise, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. Can you hear it, the voice within? A song of loss, where love begins. Her anklets sing a poem from silence deep. New ones are born. Peacocks cry in the storm's embrace. Clouds that gather leave no trace. Dreams like bangles shattered, worn from silence deep. New ones are born. A thousand doomsday shift, they sway the wind. Whispers, don't you stay. A count shadows stretched so long.
Hello everyone. Again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depends on where you are. So, we have just completed segment 1 and 2 throughout the day today. Now, we're moving on to segment 3 as we continue our conversation around different conversations around workplace well-being, as well as the challenges that we face, what action can we take, what are certain failures that we've seen, what are certain things that we've seen that have worked. And these have all been brought to us by our experts, people who have gone through a journey, have gotten experience over the period of years while working uh, across different industries with different organizations, and learned from there according to the data that they've collected, learned from their different insights that they've brought to us over here. So, welcoming everybody to segment 3 of the Global Workplace Wellbeing Summit 2026. I'd now like to call upon one of our speakers who was there for the previous segment is to give us a recap of the previous segment. So, Isioma, over to you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I must say, you need to go and check out Block 2. There were amazing, amazing insights that were shared, but I have the opportunity to summarize. But I would recommend go watch the videos. Um, I've had 5 reflections, but I'm going to go very quickly. And the first one would be that we need to move from seeing well-being as an initiative and moving it to the foundation upon which organizations build. And which means that well-being cannot be seen as a purely HR responsibility, but it has to be seen as something we need to embed in the way that we work, in the way work is designed, the way it's led, and the way people experience it on a daily basis. The second thing would be leadership shapes reality. So, psychological safety is a conversation that we really had. A number of people talked about psychological safety, but we know that psychological safety comes from leaders. Leaders set the tone by the way that they behave, by the environments that they create, and ultimately, these are the things that actually impacts overall well-being. The third thing will be what gets measured gets owned. So we also talked about how can we help leaders? How can we have conversations with CEOs? How can we present well-being to a board of directors? And we talked about the well-being also has to be something that we can measure so that it can also be prioritized by the business. How can we present a business case to leaders by creating matrices around how we present the conversation on well-being? And so that it's not just seen as a nice to have, but like we said, like it's foundational. It is a strategic direction that leaders and organizations should take. The fourth one was one that we really had an in-depth conversation around, was really about performance and well-being and how we cannot separate both. For too long, we have seen it as competing priorities. We have to pick one or the other. But how about we understand that for us to have sustainable performance, well-being has to be the foundation. You cannot have sustainable performance without healthy and sustainable people working in your organization. So we talked about it from a systematic perspective, from an organizational perspective. But one of our speakers also talked about from an individual level as well. So the organization has a responsibility, but the people also have a responsibility to care for their own well-being as well. And so, one of the things we talked about was how can we create purposeful work, meaningful work, things like volunteerism, because we understand that people also want to see how they contribute to profits, but they want to see that it matters, that it is making an impact. So, creating purposeful work also helps in people just being healthy and happy to come to work every day. And the overarching theme, if I were to summarize, I would say that sustainable organizations are built when strategy, when leadership behavior, when human well being, when we see well being through the eyes of human beings, are fully aligned. When these 3 things fully align and are no longer treated as separate conversations, we are now headed in the right direction for workplace well being. Yeah, I think that will be the summary for block 2.
As always, thank you so much, Isioma. I think you've really structured it very well. And thank you for joining us and helping me welcome our next set of speakers and panel members who are here for our segment number 3. As we move up, I think the segment number moves up, the conversations get tougher and tougher. So I'm really looking forward to inviting them. Thank you, Isioma.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being such a gracious host. And I'm looking forward to listening to all the other speakers as well.
Thank you. All right, I'd now like to call upon our panel members for today, and you're all in for a treat. This goes out to our audience as well as our panel members because co learning is such a big part of our summit. Hi, hello, hello. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Just a moment.
Hi.
It's on. Yes. Perfect. Great. Lovely to see you all. So just, as Isioma was talking, I think you sort of gathered or perhaps you've been watching it from LinkedIn and YouTube since the morning. I hope you have, because the conversation, as I was saying, is getting tougher and tougher. And I think not tougher for us because, we've gone through the journey, but tougher for the audience to digest as we move ahead. And I hope it does get a little tough, because it's the hard hitting questions that we also brought in segment 2 and 3 that would really sort of hit the spot. Segment 2, not 3. We're going into 3 now. All right. So, segment 1, we started the conversation with, what are we still getting wrong when it comes to workplace well being, right? We sort of started, we brewed around that, we explored that. In segment 2, we came to understanding, okay, now that if we have an initiative, or if we have something like a well-being program in our organization, is it seen by the leadership or is it just an HR thing? That's where we sort of started talking. Segment 3 here is now about, because we really did talk about psychological safety, what I want to start with all of you to talk about is, why do organizations, so now that we've got this whole, let's say initiatives by HRs, we've done programs, all of that, but then why are organizations still ignoring psychological safety? Why is it still this sort of second priority, which again, one of our speakers from the previous segment brought up? It's still not a priority. Forget about it being priority. I think the word here I'm looking for is ignore, and that's like the hard hitting part. So why do organizations still ignore psychological safety and this whole systemic well-being approach within their workplaces? Right, so take a moment, and we'll just have a quick discussion around it, and then we'll move on as we do for each of these segments. I'd like to hear from Dr. Elif, right? If I don't say your name right, please correct me. All right.
Yeah, that's the I think the most repeated sentence from me, because I have international students and colleagues, so I excuse my pronunciation of names.
Also,
So
just a moment before you begin, we'd love to know about each one of you, because you're new to our audience. So we'd love to know about you and then hear your response to the question. Yes.
okay, so I'm Elif Yurdakul, and I'm from Turkey and Germany. So I live here in Berlin for 2 years, and I'm working at universities for 14 years. I have a marketing PhD and organizational psychology master, and I'm into marketing and business development strategies and also corporate well-being strategies. And I also had an entrepreneurship past. So I was partner for an commercial architecture company for 10 years. And the last 5 years, I'm being a co-founder and also advisor for tech startups. And in here, Berlin, I also work with startups as in startup competition. So, and also I'm into students projects and entrepreneurship. And for the last more than 10 years, I'm into well-being. So it started with my own well-being, and then I started sharing what I know. So I had courses at universities like mindfulness and well-being, and also I shared with the companies as a corporate and employee well-being. And this is one of the hot topic here, the psychological safety, and also the job insecurity. Because of the AI and because of the every uncertain things the world brings our lives, like we having 2 major ongoing wars, and the economy, politics, and the technology is so developing so fast, so uncertain. And to answer the question, how they ignore the psychological safety, I think it's not only the companies but also the governments. They reflect how they feel to the rest. Like if they feel safe, they might think that everyone feels safe, because we tend to get blind with our own feelings and to not to see the others. So the management has information, they have data, and they can see what's coming because they run the direction. So when you know what's coming, when you know what's your next move, your brain gets relaxed, gets calm, and it opens you a space to behave, to act, to do. And when you don't know, when things are uncertain, we paralyze. So the management, to me, they know the things and they reflect to the team like as they know. But the teams and the employees, they don't know what's coming, how AI will change their position, and if they're going to be replaced or not. So it affects the insecurity and also the psychological safety. And another reason, it's coming together with the first one. The management want dating to protect their teams with not sharing. So if they don't share the information that's coming, they think that everyone will be so, safe, and they work well in efficiency. But it's the opposite. When you don't know, you paralyze and you don't function. And at some point, you start anxiety, and you lose your direction. So and there can be many other reasons, but the majority, I think, we just reflect ourselves to others, and also the in our minds we decide on behalf of others to protect them.
I'm really glad that you opened with the whole, if they feel, if the perception is safety, then you feel safe. Or if you feel safe, then you just assume that people might also feel safe. There could be
Yeah,
so
because
much that we can
it's
add.
our mind is pretend, and our mind also assumes that the world is just like us, what we having and the others having. So the awareness, self-awareness is needs to be high to see what you are feeling, but also it needs to direct you to social awareness. The others also have things, and they can be different than yours.
Exactly. I'd like to hear from Misha as well. Misha, tell us a little bit about you and get us started on this conversation.
Okay, so thank you for the opportunity. I think the reason I'm here today is to share from the perspective of a mental health occupational therapist. I've also got my master's in public mental health, and my topic is around the work that I've done. So in COVID 2020, we started the first ever wellness program for healthcare workers in a large academic hospital in Cape Town, South Africa. So that's where I'm based. And what we started doing is offering on-site counseling to ours because we were a COVID hospital. That was the start. And we've moved to a fully fledged wellness center that I manage at the hospital. And it's more than the center. The center is the physical space, but the center provides leadership training, rooted in psychological safety training. And these are not once off training, but they provide ongoing support to nurses, pharmacy leaders, doctors, and all categories of staff. And the way we do it is that we're wanting to embed it systematically. So it's not just individual empowerment of leaders, but it's looking at how do we embed the next generation of healthcare workers to come into a system that understands psychological safety, but also practices it. We've started it, so it's a 6-year journey into this. But there are, to answer your question and why we talk the topic today, what are we still ignoring in psychological safety and a systemic well-being? So at our hospital, I can proudly say we've moved from individual to system, but there's still things that we need to learn in this journey. And I've jotted some talking points. The first thing that I want to say is because it's a healthcare and academic lens that I share with you today, in real healthcare systems, well-being does not fail because people don't care. It fails because resource pressure, especially in a lower middle to income country like South Africa, hierarchical culture, and leadership modeling intersect. And a lot of you have shared that both in the first and the second block, but also in this section. So we know that psychological safety is often misunderstood as soft. We know that. However, we in this room understand that in high healthcare pressures or high pressure environments, psychological safety is still seen as a luxury and not essential and not a safety mechanism. We know what to do if people fall at work. There's protocols, there's forms that need to be filled. People know where to get help and what to do. And there's sick protocols. But what happens when people are bullied in the workplace? What do we do? Do we stand back and point? Or is there a form that we fill? Is there a person we need to go and talk to? And we've built that in the system where we have created that kind of awareness in how we lead. But there's still work to be done. And the work that needs to be done is that leaders and organizations still prioritize productivity. So in a hospital, it's waiting lists, it's theater times, it's patient in and out throughput through a hospital. Emotional climate is really measured with the same urgency. And when I talk about emotional climate, I'm talking about the staff and the healthcare workers that I work with. So what we've tried to do is embed it into how they work on a daily practice. That includes training our nurses, doctors, pharmacists, allied healthcare workers to embed emotional check-ins into their ward rounds. So we've trained them, we support them, we teach them different ways of doing that. And what that does is allow people to come to work and share a little bit about who they are beyond their title, and creates safety in understanding of each other. So that's a small way we started. There's still other ways that we do it. We've also integrate leadership training and the psychological safety lens as something that leaders have to go through. We are a 4,500 staff member hospital, so we in 6 years haven't covered a fraction of that. We've started sustainable models that continue. And what we've done is we've advocated throughout the years in the C-suite, so executive level, why this is important. Why is psychological safety important? Why is taking care of staff important? With the understanding that it's not only helping the organization, retention of staff and productivity, but also patient care and service delivery. So that has been a big part of our work that we still continue to do, and we're still not 100% there yet. But education and understanding is also a big part of psychological safety. People are scared to talk, as some my colleagues shared up there. So staff safety is still foundational to quality care. And that's one talking point. I'll leave the floor to others to share their perspective.
Thank you so much, Misha. I'd also now like to hear from, I apologize if I can't say your name right, Oganetega. You're here with us today, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Am I audible? Am I audible? Oganetega? All right, no worries. Shall we come back to you in a moment? We'll just come back to you. It's fine. Pranita, you're here with us. I'd like to hear from you. Apologies due to time constraints. I will have to ask for your thoughts to be sped up, so that we can move to the fishbowl conversation.
Sure. So my just a brief introduction. It's first of all, thank you. I'm really glad that your organization is starting this conversation about well-being going beyond why it's not being implemented. So it's very relevant conversation, not only in one country but across the globe. My background, I'm an occupational therapist, and I've also done preventive cardiology training, and have worked both in India as well as since last 20 years in the UK. And my original work was in healthcare, but since last about 10 years, corporate health and neurodiversity environment. Um, and I'm really interested from my own lived experience as well as those who I supported, because well-being is just not a fancy word. It impacts the individual, but also impact their family and as a whole the society. And yeah, that's why I feel very passionate to talk about psychological safety and how organization can create the environment where people can thrive. At the same time, profitability and increasing performance, acknowledging the importance of that. Coming back to the question, uh, I believe that the organization still ignores psychological safety, because the psychological safety or well-being is supposed to be an individual responsibility. That's the thought process, rather than there could be a possibility of break in the system design. As an occupational therapist, um, I'm aware that the optimization of health or the rehabilitation comes from not only healthy eating or exercises, but how the surrounding environment is supporting us. And that can be physical environment as well as systems and processes as well. For example, chronic stress, um, and metabolic health is not only about healthy eating and maintaining mindfulness practices. It's about how the employers are not being aware of the individual's capacity and overloading that individual employee with lots of demands beyond their capacity. There's a miscommunication in the conversation.
Right,
So,
right.
thinking about changing the system rather than only giving the responsibility to the individual, thinking that awareness training or providing the gym in the workplace can solve the problem. Awareness is key to transformation for individual, but for organization, the conversations like this and willingness to create the system change is the way to forward.
Thank you so much, Pranita. And I want to also reiterate, let's do a little bit of straightforward conversations here. So I'm coming to Obanatega. Your mic is, I think, a little bit, I can hear some background noise in it. I can hear some noise in
How
your
about now?
mic.
Is it better?
No, if you're using earphones, you
You can
can
hear
get
some
rid
noise
of
in
it.
my mic.
Yes, yes.
No, I'm using my computer.
All right. We all knew that there would be
How is
some
it?
glitch at time.
Is it better now?
Still a background noise with the mic.
There's still a background noise.
Yes.
Oh no. Okay. What do I do? Do I sign out and come back in, or maybe use an earpiece?
That's
Let
time.
me.
It's not an issue. Yeah, we've got time. It's better now. Or no?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay, when you mute it, of course, yeah. Yeah, I think you retry. You can retry.
It's better now. Did you say it's better now?
No, it's come back again. Sorry.
How is it now?
Better. Lovely. Thank you so much. So glad.
Can you hear
So
me?
glad we. Yes. Just don't move. Don't move anything, and it'll be fine.
Okay. So how are we doing now?
Perfect. Just don't move.
Okay. I'll try and stay put. Okay. Hi, and thank you so much for putting this together. To your team, it's really a conversation that needs to be heard globally as we have it regionally and even in our own local spaces. My job in Wellbeing started as a massage therapist. For over a decade, I was offering massages to high performance in the corporate spaces. And one thing that kept coming back was that the work was making them sick. I mean, literally, they were always complaining about fatigue, tension, and I realized that this conversation needed to be taken to the workplace. So I started, um, we pivoted to taking the wellness messages into the corporate spaces so that we could now start telling them about how, how that the work is designed, or the workplace designed to um, it's designed a well-being of the staff. So we've moved the conversation from working with organizations, talking to them about culture, burnout, resilience, and all of that. Now I'm working as a brand and workplace experience designer. And literally, what I do is I create sensory and well-being led experiences that help improve attention in the workplace, how people focus and how they contribute in the workplace. So to continue the conversation where the other panelists stopped, and I really like everything that has been said and the perspective that they brought into it. I would like to say that the organizations where well-being wasn't originally designed to build the organization. If you think about it, right? Initially, what we used to have is um, um, your individuals were responsible for their well-being. So you have a scenario where you say to people, um, you come to the office, leave your personal issues at the door, you need to perform in the office. That's it. Um, Now what we're seeing is that you can't separate the human from the work, right? People, we have what's the word? We have words such as or things such as work-life balance, where the organization is now beginning to see that this employee has a life outside of work and create some sort of accommodation for them in the workplace. So, psychological safety is a new term that we're all talking about, but it's a lot of it's been misunderstood. And like one of the panelists had said, some people feel that because they psychologically safe in their own workplace, it means that the other person is, but it's not really like that. And so, psychological safety is not something that is announced, it's not something that is expected. It's something that you have to design intentionally in the workplace. It's something that you have to ask the organizations or the leaders have to ask themselves, how are we designing work for people? How are we designing work in a way that well-being is also considered in the system or in the systemic design of work? So it's really how employees experience work, and it's something that has to be thought about intentionally in the workplace, in organizational design.
Thank you, everyone. Should get, the conversation is we ignore sort of psychological safety and this in why should ignore psychological safety. I don't think organizations, to be honest, after hearing all of you, I don't think that intention. Intention is not to ignore. It right. She that's what and
Your voice is breaking.
Yeah, your voice. We can hear you now, but earlier every second word we couldn't. So, but we can hear you now.
of course and we screening as well be that is it lack so we need
So Shivani, this is for me or this is for everyone? Yeah. So I'll just thank Mana Wellness, Ashwin, Shivani for bringing me here. I was hearing everyone, and this is so nice to be in this platform where we all are talking about well-being and wellness, and that means that the world is taking shape towards wellness and well-being, not only of the employee but also somebody. I was just listening. Somebody was talking about work-life balance. To me, everything is life, whether it is work or whether it is family or whether yourself, everything is life. So for me, everything has to be balanced in such a way that the maximum output can be taken for the person and maximum output can be taken for the organization as well at the same time without any psychological safety issues or disorder. On the question, Shivani, on where does well-being fail? You touched upon HR initiative, leadership priority, and individual responsibility. I think the truth is that well-being does not sit in one function.
Mm.
It sits at the intersection of all three. It is the leadership because when we were forming this organization, I think this is the newest organization which will be in your panel, which is just 2.5 years old. When we were building this organization, culture was at the core of our discussion, that how we will build that culture of ensuring that the people are feeling to give maximum in terms of output and also feeling well while working in the organization. So that was a center part. So it is the leadership responsibility because culture is shaped from the top. It is also an organizational system because policies, workloads, distribution, somebody was talking about how the works are assigned, and the incentive structures defines behavior. At the same time, at the individual practice, because awareness and self-regulations matters every day. So that way also, it is responsibility at the individual level also. So what I mean to say that well-being and wellness sits at the intersection of all these three. because it is hard to place it at that someone is most critical. Well-being falls at the core of performance, not outside of it, not after it, at the core. Because every metric we track, productivity, incentive, innovation, retention, growth, is ultimately driven by the state of mind of the people delivering it. So for me, because we are speaking a lot about fuel these days, on a very difficult sense, but for me, well-being is the fuel for tomorrow. Yeah, with that, I'll end my thing.
Okay, so I'll go first. I think Sachin summarized it really well. It is the intersection. So there's no one place that we can point and say we're failing only in HR. We're not failing in exec. We're failing in system design. We're failing in equipping our leaders and helping them to understand why psychological safety and their own well-being, not just organizational well-being, but their own well-being is important. And then giving them the tools to manage that. I think we only just starting that in the world and in our organization. When I say it's an 85-year-old hospital, and it's only been 6 years that we're putting into the well-being of staff. We just at the start. But and then also in terms of resources, I think being in an African hospital, our resources are limited. And when I talk about resources in a healthcare organization, we have the medical supplies to perform the surgeries and to take care of patients. But when it comes to what we need to cut, when resources are limited, the first thing we cut is human resource. And that means we're trying to do the same amount of work with less staff. And that, organizations thrive, and a hospital, for example, thrives on the people. So I think I want to, boldly say we're failing, but I also think we're starting to understand. So when we fail, we stop and I think you asked the question, who does this fall? Whose hand or must now fix this? And I think it's all of us. I think it's all of us in the organization. It's also the people that are not in the C-suites and the exec level. And I'll tell you why I say this from a practical perspective that we do at the hospital is that, yes, we have a center and myself and a psychologist work together at the center to run the programs, but the program isn't driven by two of us in an office. The program has been handed over to people within the hospital in all categories of staff, be it a cleaner, be it a porter, be it a nurse, allied health professional, or a doctor, in that we've empowered them with the information on what is psychological safety and how to start practicing that in their circle of influence. So in their ward rounds, in their passage conversations, in listening to each other when they burnt out, and giving them the skills on how to do that. So that's one aspect of how we can change it. It isn't just giving money to this, but it's about giving skills. And also, I like the way you said it's not that it's ignored, but that it hasn't been a priority for a long time. So how do we, I think people are aware of it, but probably need help to get it to be practical.
You're frozen. Do you want me to share?
I think you can.
Okay. So I think Sachin said it rightly that it's leadership, individual responsibility, and the system and processes. And to give you one great example, in similar to what Isha shared, um, in healthcare, I'm sure it's across the globe, there is it's pity that health workers, may doctor, nurses, allied health professional, anyone who is working in the hospital, even the staff porter, they care for the individuals, other people who are sick, but often their care has been avoided. And therefore we have, like, example where the staff, the healthcare staff, is overworked and unsatisfied and often underpaid as well. So where does the system fails? I would say not acknowledging and respecting the contribution of that individual employee across any sector. May it be given by value of financial remuneration, or may it be along with that acknowledging and respecting and celebrating the individual's contribution beyond. In NHS, like NHS staff during the COVID was given acknowledgement of banging on the pots and pan by the public at one particular time. But beyond that, really acknowledging, celebrating the individual's accomplishment, that as psychological practitioners, we there are in the room as well as outside, we know that acknowledging the success builds on the self-esteem, and that is a positive loop. There will be a positive behavior, there will be improved performances. Yeah, so I think the lack of acknowledgement of strengths and contribution, and only purely focusing on the profitability and reducing the staff, is where the organization fails.
I can sort of bring in a different angle here. Many of you have worked across multiple cultures, multiple cultural context. Do you see a difference?
Ashwin,
Okay,
I
to
missed
add
you.
something here.
Discussion.
So you mentioned that they assigning the well-being of employees as a task to HR. So it's like seeing by the management, something to check. And yeah, we assigned a task, and they provide resources like trainings and seminars, online courses, and meditation rooms, and it's done. And we see that the corporates, the organizations having that meditation rooms and the yoga studios, they work nonstop. So they're using these rooms for sleeping, and they missing the thing. If you are just overloaded, if you're just exhausted by the itself, nothing can compensate this. No training, no money. So you're gonna get burned at the end. And we miss that point. Okay, we just pretend as it's okay, because we did the budget. Okay, we gave the budget. They provide the resources, so everything is fine. They see, and they're gonna start seeing this as a system failure. So, and we're gonna start doing something real for people. And I think we are ending this session.
So I think we got cut off.
But it would be lovely to have a conversation with both of you and Sachin beyond this room, because it's so great to hear your perspective, individual perspective, and I see the alignment in the thought process. So, is it okay if we connect,
I'd
like
love
perhaps over
to.
WhatsApp?
Of course, I'd love to.
Yes,
That would be
same
really
here.
good.
Yeah.
Well, we
Yes,
can carry
because
on the conversation.
because I really believe that it's growing. It's gonna grow too much.
Yeah.
And there will be need and for direct and how to do.
And coming from a different perspective, like it can be occupational therapists, it can be psychologists, it can be the organization who are already succeeding in that. Amazing.
Yeah, I'd love to share more with you because
Same.
you in field experience.
Yeah, sorry, I think we are having some tech issues. But if you're not on screen, don't worry, you're still there. We've just taken off some people from the screen to give you a spotlight. So do not worry. I'll just see if Shivani is back and she wants to take over, or still having some tech issues.
I think we like to share the spotlight.
Yeah, yes.
Is it okay if
I
we
think
join in 10 minutes when there is a future, later from future conversation?
yeah, sure. You can drop off and join in, no problem.
Okay, so when do we start again?
Shivani is back.
Hi. Vanitega, your phone is again buzzing, so just don't do the thing you did earlier and don't move. Yeah, I think it's better now. Better.
Okay.
Perfect.
How is it
Thank
now?
you. Perfect. Let's go.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I wanted to contribute to the topic, yeah, where your and I want to agree with. I think I heard Misha about leadership behavior um, and then block two is also mentioned about leadership behavior and modeling. And I would say that the failure is actually in leadership behavior because you are not, then it can fail. So it really rests on the leader. And I'm going to talk about a real example that I've seen in my work, right? So if a leader constantly overworked, doesn't take his leave days, and he seems to be working even after work, silently, he's passing on a message to his team members that that's the stand. And even without saying like the second block where they talked about how with the so actually you expect that your team members will do the same thing and people begin to pass it on, even though the something that's different. So we have to then think about how am I showing up at work and what is it that I'm doing to improve the workplace.
I think it's a great point. The culture, the toxic working culture, because I see that it's so cultural. So I'm from Turkey, and I'm from that non-stop working, and believing that we are a family at work. So we need to support each other, and we need to support each other non-stop. So what does it mean? You have to work for the company. You have to give 100% or more. And now I see, because I work in Germany. I work in an international and private university here, and what I see, it's really cultural. So there is no non-stop working here, and you get noticed if you just overdo something, and it's highly related to me to low context, high context. And the America has the same non-stop working culture. Look at the people very successful there. They all say the same thing: hard working, and they work non-stop there. And in India it's same, in Asia it's same, in Latin America. And because we really believe that if you are just get involved in something, you need to give all you have, and it drains you. It's so overwhelming, and nothing left. So you can't sustain this, and how we're ending up in burnout.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I'd like to add to that. I think cultures across the world are similar in that productivity is rewarded and output is rewarded. Being in Africa, it's not different. Being in a high pressure academic hospital, there's an added layer of pressure in that we're not only here to serve a community that needs us, we're also pushing to publish academic papers to share what we do. And that adds another element of competition. And I'm talking about academic competition or professional competition. So we're not the culture that gets cultivated in that kind of system is that your productivity is awarded. So what results is competition. And in a healthcare environment where your job is to help patients feel good and thrive, you are at the same time competing with your colleagues to be the person who did the best on that day or saw the X amount of patients. And that takes away from people. I'll give you a practical example in a ward. I want to show up and be the nurse that's always going to put my hand up when there's something to be done versus the nurse who will say, I'm done with that. And one of the so we don't have an even way of measuring engagement at work. So engagement isn't just productivity. Engagement is, do people stay? Are we retaining the right staff? Are we giving them equal opportunity to do their best at work? Or are we only rewarding those that put up their hands up and always say yes? And how are we empowering those that aren't? So that's what an understanding of psychological safety allows us to talk about. Do we have, in a healthcare environment, high stakes and mistakes? It's okay. Is there room for mistakes? Is there room for medication errors taking place? And yes, the answer to that is always no. But what happens when a mistake happens determines the culture also. So it's not just high work, high productivity, but how do leaders and how does the team support a mistake? And how they do that shapes not what we found is that if a mistake is punished, what happens then is people just get better at hiding it. Or people just get better at saying, rather than saying I don't know or I don't understand, they get better at saying, no, I know it all and I can do it and I'll do better. And then what does that do to patient care and service delivery? So on a practical note, how are we taking care of our staff? And then culture and climate is two different things. So culture is what people walk into and see, is what behaviors are rewarded, but climate is what people feel. And my master's spoke about that in the organizational care, for example. And what it looked at is what influences people's happiness at work. And it isn't productivity. It is about the collegial support. It's about leadership support. It's about being able to also bring a little bit about yourself to work and to be able to take care of your own well-being within a system that's high pressured.
Yes, lovely points. While we come, let's go a little bit below the surface level as well. Now let's get to the point, which is that if the organization, and we're all experts here and we've seen it, we've worked with organizations, we know, and I just want you to say it as it comes. Okay, don't overthink it, don't sugarcoat it, just say it as it comes, right? This is a very honest, non-judgmental platform. If there was a signal that there's been a system failure, right, what would that signal be? What does it look like?
Fear.
Yeah. Exactly. It always comes down to some sort of an emotional indicator, right? Fear, great one.
Yeah, because it's not easy to understand looking at the outcomes, because the system and the people still produce outcomes because they have a fear and they don't know how to deal with it, so they keep functioning. But this functioning, it's not growing, it's not developing, it's just keeping the stillness, keeping the same things, and so they produce have outcomes until we don't. So at the last point, we understand something went wrong. But until then, it gives signals. You can see the fear from people, like they stop asking questions.
Yeah.
They stop answering honestly. They stop talking about how they feel because they have a fear to lose their job, to lose their positions, or to get bullied, or to left behind. And all those are not said, not told. So we need to hear the silence. We need to listen the people's behaviors, not what they say, but also how they reacting, how they doing. And to me, the silence is so powerful. Feel well, you communicate. Okay, you are not in this fight or flight mood. You feel so okay, so you keep learning, you keep developing, you keep connecting, you having fun, you having joy. But we forget to have joy at work because of fear.
Yeah.
So to me, the biggest thing is that.
Great.
Yeah.
Fear, what about the others? What do you say? Just off the top of your head.
I think for me, if there's a fundamental issue in the well-being at the organization level, it gives you signals. It gives you signals as if a high performer employee starts becoming a little distant, withdrawn. Suddenly, the person starts missing deadlines, reduced participation, like Sarah said, irritability, fatigue, and all starts coming. The ability of the organization to identify such signals is very important. Whereas there are two types of organizations. Currently, we have the fast-paced startup world and the traditional organizations, which Shivani was talking in the morning slot. So it is very difficult to identify such signal in the traditional organizations because there are thousands of people. In a startup where there are small number of people, it is still identifiable and a one-to-one conversation can be done to solve those. But in a traditional organization, it becomes very difficult. Yeah, those are my thoughts.
What about you, Misha?
I think the first thing related to fear is disengagement. So people are present at work because they need to be here, but they're not engaging. And not only do the high achievers start disengaging, but how has the environment cultivated those that didn't feel safe to engage from the start? How are we cultivating that safety? So so they're coming into fear and lack of safety. So it shows as disengagement.
Yeah, exactly.
And leaders don't know how to read that signal.
No. Everything is contributing to one another, right? I'll come to my thought in just a bit. Like we have 30 seconds to close this segment, so I want to hear one final note from Onatega. Tega. You've got your camera, but I think your audio can be audible from your phone. You can go ahead. If you can hear us. Can you hear us? Oganatega? All right. Not sure. Okay. All right, not sure. Let us know on the chat then so I can share it with everybody about your thoughts. Okay. Well, what I had in mind was that, we did start talking about whether it's, running, usually when there's like some kind of a failure or people see certain issues, we sort of go and build tools because, certain individual needs to feel better or needs to perform better or do better and, get to a particular well-being state or feel,
Can you hear me?
more productive and so on and so forth. Yes, I can hear you. Yes, come back. Yes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you. It's okay if your video is off. We can hear you. Now you're on mute completely. So I'm going to you. I hope I can hear you now. Okay. We'll just wait for her to speak again. Yeah. So as per my closing thought, I think that we did start with talking about whether it's leadership, work design, so on and so forth, right? But at the end of the day, the real system signals came down to behaviors of people. Like, Doctor, you rightly said, which was it's like the unsaid things as well, unsaid behaviors of our team members, leadership not being able to sort of read these non-verbal or verbal, behaviors and so on. It really did come down to fear, how people are feeling, how they're behaving, how distant they are, how burnt out they are, how exhausted they are over the period of time. And these little things contributed to then looking back at whether leadership cares about this enough to sort of see this, bring it up, deal with it or not, confront it or not. And that, of course, differs from organization to organization. So somewhere in this segment, I'm learning now that well-being, system failure could come down to just little behaviors that you're ignoring. So you're not ignoring psychological safety, you're ignoring these tiny little details that you come across in everyday life. And that's what I'm taking away from this segment. Thank you so much for participating. We will get to, due to time constraints as well, we will get to one of my favorite parts of all of this segments, and that is we're going to do letters from the future. So this is how it works. I think each one of you has a letter written down or certain points that you'd like to speak about. So what's going to happen is I'm going to take you all off screen for a bit so you can sort of gather your thoughts and your letters. And then I'm going to spotlight each one of you to share your letters with our audience. So keep your mics unmuted and videos on and so forth when you're back into the segment. Okay, so I'm just going to remove you all for now and get you all in by one by one. Just a moment. So this is for our audience. Quick next segment. What we're going to talk about, sorry, not next segment, but the next conversation with the current speakers is that we're going to go back um, from the future. So imagine we're in 2036, right? And we're sort of looking back, and we figured something out at the year 2036. We're finally like, yay, we finally learned how to recognize burnout as a system signal. And because this segment has taught me that I think we need to look at those little behaviors, maybe it's not just about burnout, but we finally learned that these little behaviors, like understanding fear, understanding distance, understanding disengagement, these sort of little behaviors is something that we finally learned that could be a system failure. So all of our speakers have written something to look back from 2036 or the future, to come back and sort of tell us that, we finally figured it out, and they'd like to share that ahead. So I'll invite Dr. Elif first. Here you go. Please go ahead. Over to you. Yes, unmute. You are on mute right now.
So thank you. And I'm going to read my letter from 2032, 33. And just remember that it's the current situation, because it's evolving so fast. And here's my letter. So you often ask, when did organizations finally start talking about burnout seriously? And not as an HR issue, not as an resilience problem, but as a signal that something in the system was broken. And the answer is not a single year, but it's somewhere between 2026 and 28. And that was the moment when the contradiction became impossible to ignore. So you had more tools than ever. AI was accelerating everything: writing, analyzing, deciding, producing. And yet people were not feeling lighter. They were feeling faster and more exhausted. Tasks were completed in minutes, but expectations expanded in seconds. So you thought efficiency would create space. Instead, it created pressure. And at first, organizations responded the way they always had. They added more well-being programs, more apps, more workshops, more resilience trainings, but the data did not move. So engagement stayed low, stress stayed high, turnover intentions remained persistent, and that was when a difficult realization began to surface. Burnout was not coming from the lack of well-being initiatives, because there were a lot, and it was coming from the way the work itself was designed. So around the same time, something else happened. A narrative started to appear, quiet at the beginning, then more openly. And some leaders began to say, well-being is a personal responsibility. So people are paid to manage themselves. It sounded logical, but it did not hold, because the same patterns were appearing everywhere across teams, industries, and countries. And when a problem is consistent at scale, it is no longer personal, so it is systemic. But the real breaking point was not burnout itself, it was the uncertainty. So AI was evolving faster than organizations could adapt. Roles were shifting, expectations were unclear, and leadership in many cases chose silence. Not because they did not care, but because they did not have clear answers. So they waited. And in that silence, something changed. Employees started filling the gaps themselves with assumptions, with fear, with worst case scenarios. And trust began to erode, not because of the change, but because of the lack of the transparency around it. So that is when the shift finally began. Not with a new tool, not with a new platform, but with a different kind of leadership behavior. Leaders started saying, this is what we know, this is what we don't know, and this is what might change. So it sounds simple now, but at that time, it required courage to say that's what we don't know. And it meant giving up the illusion of control. So it was big. From there, the real transformation followed. And organizations stopped asking, how do we help people cope better? And they started asking, what in our system is creating this pressure in the first place? And they began redesigning and workloads, just not wellness programs, communication flows, and not the engagement surveys, and manager roles, and not just the leadership slogans. And most importantly, they redefined productivity, not as maximum output, but as sustainable performance over time. And so it was used to remove noise, automate repetition, and reduce fragmentation, and not to increase expectation endlessly. And the distinctions made all the difference. So, looking back now, the lesson feels obvious, but it wasn't obvious back then. You were trying to solve a burnout at the level of the individual, but while the system producing it remained unchanged. And this is why nothing really improved and changed the question. So if you can live with, with the message of future, the burnout was never the problem, it was the signal. The real question was always, are you willing to redesign the system and that is producing it? So do you have the courage to change this system? That would be my letter from future.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alif. I think what a brilliant start to all the letters. I'll quickly move on to our next letter writer. letter writer. I do want to hear from Oganatega because I know that you've been trying so hard to do this. So I'm going to give it over to you. I'm pulling you on screen now for you to share your letter. As long as you stay still, I think we'll be just fine.
Okay.
Perfect. Let's go.
All right. Thank you. So it's 2035. I'm reading my letter. It's 2035, and finally, organizations, not through another well-being program, but through a shift in thinking, they stopped asking only, how do our customers feel? And started asking, how do our people feel? Just like customer experience became a priority, employee experience became non negotiable because organizations finally realized they were measuring performance without measuring how work was actually experienced. Meetings became more intentional, work became more human, and leaders understood something critical. How people feel at work drives how they perform. Burnout was no longer managed at the surface. It was addressed at the level of how work was designed. And the most important shift of all, organizations align. Realize that you cannot build a high performing workplace on top of a poor daily experience. So they redesigned work not just for output, but for how people actually experience it, and everything changed.
Perfect. That was so nice Thank you so much. So sweet and so straightforward. And I'm just so happy that you could finally share your thoughts regardless of these tech challenges. Thank you. I'll now invite Pranita ahead. Pranita, please come ahead. Your camera is on and you're up to share your letter. Okay, we'll come back to Pranita. Misha, are you ready to go? Yes, I'm pulling you in for your letter. Please go ahead.
Okay. So, dear colleagues of 2026, I'm writing to you from a healthcare system that feels intense, but no longer feels silent. We still work long hours, we still make complex decisions under pressure. Technology has advanced in ways you can only begin to imagine. Artificial intelligence now supports clinical decision making, workforce planning, and early identification of burnout risk. Digital systems help leaders track patterns in workload, emotional fatigue, and organizational climate in real time. Communication flows faster, information is clearer, operational efficiency has improved. And yet, the most important shift was not technological, it was human. For many years, burnout was treated as an individual weakness. Healthcare workers were encouraged to be more resilient while continuing to work in environments that shaped chronic resource strain, moral distress, and hierarchical silence. We became very good at measuring productivity, but we were slower to measure psychological safety. We invested in tools before we invested in trust. The turning point came when organizations began to understand that burnout was not simply exhaustion, it was data. Not just emotional data, but systemic intelligence. It told us about unsafe workloads, unspoken fear, unprocessed grief, leadership behaviors that unintentionally silenced teams. AI helped us see patterns, but only human leaders could create meaning from them. Algorithms could identify risk, but only relationships could restore hope. Automation could improve efficiency, but only psychological safety could sustain compassion. When leaders began to ask, not how do we make staff cope better, but what are we asking them to carry, systems started to change. Protected time for reflection became non negotiable. Peer support structures were funded, not voluntary. Leadership performance indicators included emotional climate metrics. Wellbeing data was reviewed alongside financial and clinical outcomes. Technology became a partner in care, but humanity remained the foundation of healing. Healthcare workers did not suddenly become less dedicated, they became less alone. And as their environments became safer, their capacity expanded. Innovation increased, retention stabilized, patient care improved. Not because people worked harder, but because they worked in a system that recognized their limits. The greatest lesson we learned was this: burnout was never the problem to eliminate. It was the signal that guided us towards wiser leadership. And even in an age of intelligent machines, the courage to listen remained deeply human, with gratitude to those who chose to listen early from the future.
Thank you so much. With gratitude to those who listened early. Brilliant. All right. I'll now invite Sachin to go ahead. Sachin, pulling you in for your letter from the future.
Yeah, thank you, Shivani. So, yeah, dear 2026 me, you would be very happy to note that we have finally stopped treating well being as an initiative.
and started living it as a system. I know you won't believe this easily, but work feels lighter here. Not because we are doing less, but because we are no longer carrying it the wrong way. Back in your time, organizations were trying really hard. There were wellness apps, yoga sessions, webinars, even mandatory fun. Yes, that was as ironic as it sounds. But the real shift didn't come from adding more. It came from asking one uncomfortable question: what if the way we design work itself is making people unwell? That question changed everything. We didn't just redesign workflows, we redesigned expectations. We stopped glorifying late nights and calling it passion. We stopped rewarding urgency like everything was on fire. Turns out, most things weren't. Leaders began to see something simple yet profound. Performance conversations and well being conversations were never separate. We were the ones separating them. Managers changed too. They are still chasing outcomes, but not at the cost of people. In fact, the best teams now, they are not the busiest ones. They are the ones where people leave a day's work feeling that was meaningful. Imagine that we also became better listeners, not just through surveys we barely read, but through everyday human moments. The pause before someone speaks, the silence from someone who is usually loud, the I am fine that clearly isn't. We learn to notice. And more importantly, we learn to act early. Before burnout became a badge of honor, before exhaustion became personality. One shift you will appreciate: we stop telling people to be more resilient while handling them broken systems. We fix the systems. Resilience did not disappear, it just stopped being lonely. And here's the part you will smile at: productivity did not drop when we focused on well being, it grew. Because when people feel good about their work, they don't just complete it, they care about it. Innovations got deeper, people stayed longer, and for the first time, work did not take away from life, it added to it. Look back, the turning point wasn't a big policy or a global movement, it was a quiet mindset shift. We stopped asking, how do we fix people? And started asking, how do we fix the way work works? If I could nudge you to do one thing starting today, it would be this: don't wait. Notice the small things. Questions: this is how it's always been. And when in doubt, design for humans, not just for output. Because here's the secret you are still figuring out. The best output comes from people who feel a sense of accomplishment while creating it. And the future you are working so hard to build, we are already living it. And it feels well. With a little more calm and a lot more clarity, yours 2035.
Thank you, Sachin. Beautiful. I hope we all act on it. Pranita, pulling you in for your letter from the future.
Thank you. So I'll go ahead and share what I have written down. I'm writing to you from the year 2036, the year we finally stopped asking people to cope and started asking what they are coping with. For a long time, we misunderstood burnout. We thought it was just about resilience, about the behavior, individual responsibility, about their mindset. So we responded with more awareness days, well-being campaign, behavioral change program, more gyms, more uh, apples and pears in the office, but something didn't change. People were still experiencing exhaustion. They struggled to think clearly. They stayed late trying to keep up. What we failed to see at that time was that stress was doing beneath the surface, not just emotionally, but brain performance and physiologically. People were just wasn't experiencing stress. They were experiencing brain fog, slower processing speed, difficulty in concentration, reduced emotional regulation, and which affected their own personal physical health as well as the relationship. Simple tasks began taking longer report writing time, longer meetings, slower decision making, as well as communication impact within the team. And because the system didn't recognize this, people began to mask. They continued to overperform, while struggling underneath. But masking had a cost. People stayed longer hours to compensate. They pushed through the fatigue. And over time, this led to something deeper: chronic stress, inflammation, and metabolic disruption. We began to see more sick leaves and more presentism, where people were physically present but not able to function. And still, we continued to focus on individual behavior. We told people to change, but we missed something fundamental. Their behavior is not driven by the awareness training alone. It is shaped by the system and environment and the psychological safety. If people didn't feel psychological failed, safe, if demand didn't exceed their capacity, no amount of training, awareness, and campaign can create long-term sustainable changes. Around the same time, there were promising shift. Healthcare and insurance began to moving towards prevention. Organizations started incentivizing healthier behavior using data, technology, and behavior insight to support long-term well-being. And this effort helped to a point. We learned something critical. No external intervention can compensate for internal environment that continuously creates stress. We also saw a rise in awareness of neurodiversity. More and more people were identifying with ADHD, autism, dyslexia. But again, something didn't fully translate it. Diagnosis was increasing, but meaningful support often didn't follow. Many individuals were left navigating the same system with the same expectation, but now with a greater awareness of challenges. And that created different kind of strain. The shift finally came when the organization began to connect all this. When they saw cognitive fatigue, emotional strain, metabolic health, behavior, and performance not as a separate issue, but part of the same system. They began to redesign the work. They began to reduce the cognitive load. They began to make expectation clearer, positive communication. They began to incentivize people along with finances appreciation. They created environment where people don't have to mask and they can be open and they can make themselves easy to share. They started designing for differences, not just for the average. And something changed. People just didn't feel better. They perform, they function at a higher level. They could think clearly. They felt optimistic and they felt proud to contribute with their own unique strength. They could make decisions effectively, quickly, energy stabilize, performance become consistent. So profit for the organizations as well. Across cultures, different nationality, the insight was the same. Whether in the structure system or fast-paced environment, the human response to stress did not differ, only system. And the most important lesson we learned was human energy is not infinite. The organization either able to protect it or they can deplete it by the system and by their designs. And when we finally understood that, burnout stopped being something we managed. It became something we listened to. Because burnout was never the problem. It was the system and signal. And when we can responded to that signal, not with just program, but with better design, we didn't just improve well-being. We changed how work itself was experienced. People no longer had to choose between performing, working, or staying well. They could do both. And that was the moment we finally understood. When you support the human, performance is not force. It is a natural byproduct. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pranita. I'll quickly move on to Bellam, who's our final letter sharer for this evening. Well, my evening, not everybody's evening. Bellam, hello. Before you begin, please tell us a little bit about yourself, just very quickly. I know that we'll pull you into the next conversation as well, but still, just a little bit, very quickly, and then we can go on to your letter. Quick heads up
Okay.
on time as well.
Yes.
Sorry to rush you, but just a quick heads up on the time.
No
All right.
worries. Yeah.
Thank you.
Belém Ortega from Mexico. I'm a well-being and leadership consultant, and let me share you my thoughts. It's going to be brief. We learn that well-being has the same meaning than productivity. When you integrate a proper framework and it's really well placed and implemented, you don't only have a great place to work, but you have a place of certainty and trust, translated in happy employees, not only for emotional wellness, but systemically working at the best version of themselves. These are my thoughts about the burnout. Thank you.
Very short, very concise, and thank you so much for coming in and sharing that with all of us. Okay, perfect. All right, so I've got all of my speakers still over here, and we've spent about 1 hour 40 minutes together today, and we always close each of our segments with certain reflections and things that we're taking away from not just what we shared, but from each other, right? There was a whole point of discussion, conversation, thoughts that may have come up, feelings that may have come up, emotions that may have come up for us. So the next 5-ish minutes, what we're going to do is we're going to sit back, relax in our space without any cameras or anything. You're going to take out your pen and paper or phone or whatever you feel comfortable in writing. You're going to take deep breaths, because you should. And you're going to write down what it is that you sort of reflected upon, what you're going to take away from today's conversation. It has been an overload of information as well as thoughts. So you're going to write those things down, gather your thoughts, and then we come back, reconvene in about 5 minutes. I'll pull you all in, and then we have a final round of reflection, and then we close this entire segment. Okay, so I'll let the speakers do their thing, and everybody please stay tuned for the final round of reflections from our speakers on segment 3.
Footsteps fade, where do I belong? Heart of my mind, why do you roam? Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. each grain of sand, it knows my name. Can you hear it, the voice within? A song of loss where love begins. Heart of my mind, why do you roam? Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. Heart of mine, why do you roam? Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. The gurus chime a distant call. Her anklets sing, rise, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. Can you hear it, the voice within? A song of loss where love begins. Her anklets sing a poem from silence deep. New ones are born. Peacocks cry in the storm's embrace. Clouds that gather leave no trace. Dreams like bangles shattered, worn from silence deep. New ones are born. A thousand dunes they shift, they sway the wind. But whispers, don't you stay. A count of shadows stretched so long. Footsteps fade, where do I belong? Oh, heart of my mind, why do you roam? Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. The cuckoo's chime a distant call. Her anklets sing, rise, don't you stay. The stars they glimmer, speak of pain. Each grain of sand, it knows my name. Can you hear it, the voice within? A song of loss where love begins. Heart of my mind, why do you roam? Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. Heart of mine, why do you roam? Searching skies, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. The gurus chime a distant call. Her anklets sing, rise, never a home. The sun burns bright, the night so cold. Feelings buried, stories untold. Can you hear it, the voice within? A song of loss where love begins. Her anklets sing a poem from silence deep. New ones are born. Peacocks cry in the storm's embrace. Clouds that gather leave no trace. Dreams like bangles shattered, worn from silence deep. New ones are born. Some doomsday shift they sway the wind.
Hello, everybody. So we're coming to the last segment of our, well, segment 3. And the final segment is always about reflection and deep reflection. So I believe our speakers are done with gathering their thoughts and they're ready to share their reflections for the final round. After having spent sort of now 40 minutes together, what we really want to take away today is because we've talked about different elements that may have come up when we spoke about system failures, right? But one of the biggest things that did come up for us was behavior throughout the conversation. Yes, we talked about leadership, we talked about policies, we talked about culture, but we also realized it's the little things, it's those little behaviors that we're not looking at. With so much intention and purpose, and to make sure that we look at those little behaviors in order to create a psychologically safe environment, which could then turn into system failures over time. So we are taking a lot away from segment 3. As I kept saying, as we move up the segment, the conversations get tougher, deeper, and we really come out with amazing insights from them. So now I'm inviting all of the speakers back online to share their thoughts. This is a very open thought discussion. So, each one just sort of goes 1 minute at a time and just share what you thought of throughout the segment from yourselves, your own thoughts, emotions, and what you've learned from each other. Just let me pull everybody in. Perfect. All of you are here. I will, however, call out one name to start off, and that would be Sachin. Please start us off.
Yeah, thanks, Shivani. I think three things stayed with me over the discussions we had. First of all, wonderful discussion, and I want to thank everyone for their perspectives. First is that this is not a regional issue; it's global, and the way we are thinking, people from different parts of the globe are also thinking the same way about well-being, and this is a good place to be in. That we have started thinking it. This is an issue. Second, I think we are reacting too late. Well-being does not break out suddenly. It shows up early signals, which we spoke about during the conversations of early signals. As someone said, that fear, someone said distancing. So, and if we don't learn to notice those early signals, we will always be one step behind. Third, organizations needs to become a safer spaces to actually share. As Pranita was talking about, no masking. So right now, a lot of people are just masking, performing that they are okay. And if that does not change, no well-being initiatives will actually truly lead to its results, and it will not land well. And finally, the biggest shift for me that is that maybe it is not a work-life balance; it is just about balancing the entire life. So if the life is balanced, work does not need to be managed separately; it naturally aligns. That's what I'm taking back.
Perfect. Open thoughts, everybody. So, Misha, I can see you smiling, I think. Let's go.
Okay. So, what I framed my reflection on was the word courage. And what we're needing to embed psychological safety and system signal checks in terms of burnout is the courage to redesign workflow, courage to empower leadership and their leadership roles to incorporate support of their own support and also each other, the courage to embed psychological safety in the organization's system at all levels, the courage to listen to people in all rooms and to each other, and the courage to care in a human way, the courage to have honest conversations and create spaces where honest conversations can happen in organizations, the courage to support each other, and the courage to not only integrate work-life balance, but to live it. And lastly, the courage to reward self-care and collegial support.
Brilliantly put. Thank you so much. Dr. Elif, please go ahead.
So, although said, and I'm still agree with all of these, and there is a saying for marketing, and the Peter Drucker said, as I remember, I'm not sure, and marketing is too important to be left to the marketing department. It needs to get involved everyone, and I believe this corporate well-being also. It's too important to leave it only to HR, and it reflected me. We talking here, and we understand the issue. We know the issue, so we have different perspectives, but the core is same. So we speaking the same language, but it needs to involve the management. It needs to involve the C levels. It needs to involve leaders to make it real. Otherwise, it's just theories we talk to each other. So we need to raise the voice, and we need to reach out the decision makers. Yeah,
Lovely.
that's my.
Perfect. Organetega, we're good. Let's go. Your thoughts today.
Yes.
So I think that the next opportunity for organizations is to move away from programs and just move away beyond programs and focusing more intentionally on how work is designed daily, how it's designed to be experienced daily. And in practical terms, I just wrote down my notes so that I can quickly read it out. This is what it looks like. Shifting from activity to experience design, and not just what are people doing, but how are they feeling while they're doing it. Recognizing that leadership behavior shapes experience and more than policy. So we have policies, but then how the leaders model it, or how they model what is done at work is very, very important, and that's what shapes um, the experiences in the workplace. Designing environments that support focus, participation, and openness, not just output. Because in reality, people respond to experiences, not intentions. Engagement is influenced by how safe and supported people feel, and performance is a reflection of the environment that people operate in. So perhaps the real shift is this: moving from managing well-being as an initiative to designing it into the everyday experience of work, because ultimately experience is what drives behavior and behavior is what drives performance. Thank you so much. This has been a lovely experience, learning and sharing with all of the amazing people on this panel and throughout all the talks.
Thank you so much. Lovely. Pranita, let's go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So great discussion, stimulating conversation from everyone. And thank you for bringing this topic for benefit of not only employees, but how the organization can make a difference. So my reflections from the conversation of today as a whole is awareness, appreciation, and acknowledging human at the heart of the work. So awareness create transformation at an individual level, whether it's a health transformation or life transformation. But awareness at the organization level could be looking at the staff turnout, the challenges at work, presentism, a lot of conversation happening with the staff, and that can help to take the responsibility only from the individual to the leadership. Second is appreciation of staff, whether it's at a healthcare setting, as Misha was discussing, or in a corporate organization. Acknowledging the staff can help with improving their self-esteem, and as a result, their own performances improve and the well-being capacity for the organization improves. And thirdly, purpose and acknowledging the human's potential. What I mean by that, when people with health condition or with compromised psychological health, they seek the work opportunity, they come with the one positive intention to contribute with their unique skills, their unique purpose in the world. Yes, there is a financial well-being element, and there is a element of contributing to their own um, personal family member or friends, but there is a wider value to contribute to the society. And supporting that individual employee with some tools, some system changes can really enhance the whole society rather than just profiting in your organization. So those were my thoughts.
Thank you so much. We've got Bellum.
Good. I have two different thoughts that caught my attention. The first one was the cultivating engaging environments for the people, for employees. And the second one was about the subject of artificial intelligence, that we should and must celebrate humanity that we can bring to the table, because it's not about only productivity, it's all about human interactions. Thank you.
Lovely. That's from everybody. Thank you so much, our dear speakers, for joining me here today for our segment number 3. As we go up, as I keep saying, the conversations get difficult and they get tougher, but they also get deeper and with more insights. So I think level 3, and then we've got one more to go for today. So thank you, everybody. I think to sum it up, I'm going to end it on a lighter note today, and that is throughout this entire conversation, I know we talked about a lot of things, but one thing I wanted to say is I think it turns out that well-being, this is what I really wrote down while everyone was speaking. Turns out well-being isn't broken because people can't cope. It's probably broken because systems don't let them break. And that's where I'm going to leave it at. So thank you everyone for coming in. And to our audience, I will again reiterate that the panel members that you see here today are not just speakers. They are, of course, great communicators, but they are people who have gone into, the crux and the subject of workplace well-being completely, dedicated their lives either as leaders or experts who have worked with organizations and really come out with experiences, data, and insights. So they're here not just as speakers today, but real life examples of those who've created some sort of change and taken action when it comes to making workplaces healthier and better across different regions and industries. So thank you everyone for being here and being the catalyst that you all are. I hope you guys will listen to us for segment number 4. That's the final one for today, and keep in touch. So speak to you all very soon. If you have any book recommendations, you can either say it out now as you drop off, or leave it for the chat so I can tell the audience that's watching us if you have any book recommendations at all.
So it was really great to listen to you, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Perfect. We've got book recommendations. I'll pass this down. We've got 1 Minute Wisdom. We've got Brené Brown's Dare to Lead.
I will recommend this one for leadership, the Leadership by Brené.
It's mirrored, so it's going to take me a while to read it. It's It's like a cognitive test. All right. Thank you so much. You can leave it in comments for our audience on LinkedIn as well so that they can see it. And lovely speaking to all of you. Keep in touch. See you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.